Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
We are good. We are so excited.
I'm ecstatic to be here.
We can also do some vocal warm-ups together.
Yes, a thing distinctly hard to say.
But harder still to do.
Hello, Stephanie. Don't want to leave you out of this.
Well, thanks, Corey. I was just like, wow, I am in another...
You're in the other side of campus, Stephanie.
I am in the other side of campus, which is why I love this podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the other side of campus. I am Katie Dawson. I'm an associate professor in the theater and dance department in the College of Fine Arts.
I'm Stephanie Holmsten, professor in government in the College of Liberal Arts.
Today we're going to be talking with assistant professor of acting, Corey Allen. Corey is a multidisciplinary artist, researcher, and storyteller whose creative practice, research, and teaching spans acting, directing, writing, visual art, and immersive performance. Welcome, Corey.
Let's do it.
Impact.
From the University of Texas at Austin, this is the other side of campus.
All right.
So to get us started, Corey, I feel literally on the other side of campus. As a political scientist, Katie's description of your work included some words that I don't use regularly. So I wonder if we could start off by asking you to tell me a little bit more about your work. It sounds like your work spans a lot of different spaces and practices, artists and researcher, for example. So what is acting training about here at UT, and what kind of skills are you teaching in the classroom?
Awesome. So I'll unpack the various facets of that question. I think starting off, if I had to define myself, which is something I have been resistant to for most of my life as a creative, I would say I'm a storyteller at the end of the day. When I first entered the profession of acting, for me, what that meant was just sort of getting up on stage and telling the stories that other writers had written for me. And then over the last 20 some odd years that I've been doing this, that role has changed. Many of the skills that I had developed sort of outside of those spaces, I began to integrate into my practice as an artist. So I am a visual artist who paints and who does multimedia stuff and some sculpture. I am also a writer and a director, and I have been crafting immersive performance pieces that center on identity and unpack the way that we look at things like mental health and creativity in different communities. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. And then how that connects to what I'm doing here at UT as an assistant professor of acting in the Department of Theater and Dance is that I am training, I hope, the next generation of artists to step into those spaces and to decide how they want to use their gifts as storytellers to connect to community. Nuts and bolts actor training at UT, or I think at most universities, a BFA program, which is what I'm primarily teaching in, is devoted to giving the basic skills that an actor needs to communicate story to an audience. Training based in voice and movement and text analysis and relaxation and understanding how to communicate between different types of people. So that's, it in a nutshell. Did I miss any parts of that question?
No, not at all. And with any good answer comes more questions. So that was really helpful, Corey. And I'm finding as I'm listening to you, when I think about acting training, I think of the stage or the screen. But when you say storytelling, I'm beginning to think a bit more about where that might show up even outside of a museum and a screen and a stage. Where does storytelling take us?
Yeah, this is a very expansive question. I think with the invent of social media, I think the platform has completely changed. I think I love a good theater space. I love being in a nice proscenium house with 500 people. The economics of that make that really untenable for a lot of production companies around the country. So they've been reimagining what those platforms look like. And I think they're getting smaller and smaller. Instagram and YouTube and Tubi and TikTok, all of these platforms have become theater spaces. Podcasts have become theater spaces. There are still community gatherings, and some of them are very small and some of them are larger. But I think that we are in a time where anything that can get the attention of an audience can potentially be a theatrical space. And I think it is what we're trying to do is to prepare our students for a future where a proscenium or a black box theater might not be a thing. They might be doing theater in a fast food restaurant parking lot. They might be doing it in the lobby of a museum or the lobby of, I don't know, you can imagine it, but just for them to begin to imagine what they might be asked to step into if these traditional models or for places of storytelling no longer exist or have been forced to change.
So, Corey, I think people look at acting training sometimes and they're like, how do you spend 4 years studying that? And what is acting about? So talk to us a little bit about how you introduce the ideas of acting, maybe to someone who knows nothing about it, which might be many of us listening to this podcast.
I love that. And you're right. We get it all of the time. Only second to how do you memorize all those lines? That's the number 2 question. The first one is, how do you do that acting thing? And one of the things that I tell my students is that this thing that we are studying, we are studying the things that you've already done. This is a recreation of, a representation of the life that you're already living. The baby learns to act pretty early, right? They want something. They have a want, a goal, an objective. I want to be held. I want to be dry. I want to be fed. And they've got these gigantic sky people moving around their world. And they find that the only way that they can get them to respond to them is fire. And if they're lucky, that sky person picks them up and gives them what they want. And they learn in that instant, if I want this, I do this. And as you move along from infancy into childhood and adulthood, we're learning those markers, right? So we've been acting the whole time. If you want something from your grandparent or your auntie or TT or whoever it is, that you want them to give you some candy, you know that there's a way that you behave with them that will get you what you want. And perhaps if you want to get those keys from your parents to go, driving to the mall, there's a way that you approach them. So there are all of these things that we have been doing as humans from the time that we're born, that the minute we ask you to do it on stage, it feels foreign to you, but you do it intuitively in your life. So there really is little, just very, very little space between the performance and the reality if we're doing it right.
Oh, the porousness is super interesting. And I think to have a grasp of how to move in and out of those places, to play those tactics is a pretty good education in what it is to be human as well.
And when I think about community engagement, I think about this partnership that's built to achieve some goals together. And this process of acting and reflecting and representing is all part of that change making that I think we all ultimately hope to do in some way in our lives, some goal we're trying to achieve. And this is helping people think about that intentionally.
Yeah. And in the act of just being seen. And I think most people don't realize that that is a need. I don't think most people will acknowledge that that is a need that I think the theater and entertainment, it fills. You can go on and see someone whose life experience may be just similar enough to your own, that they can say something or do something that you haven't quite found the courage to do or say yet. And that by seeing that mirrored to you, it gives you the agency to go, you know what? That's me.
Yeah.
That's me.
Take us into your classroom. What does the preparation look like? What are kind of the big ideas that you are trying to work with your students to develop?
It can be overwhelming if you think about it too much. I think someone born in the 1900s, as the children like to say, I had a far more hands-on experience with training. A theater space and acting to me, it was like you go into a dark room, you sit down, you watch some people in some makeup up on the stage, and you're entertained. And there was something exciting about that. Or you would sit at home in front of the television and be taken away by whatever was playing on the screen. And then you turn the TV off and then you're back in reality. There are just so many other possibilities now. And so the students are coming into the classrooms with bigger imaginations and sometimes shorter attention spans, often shorter attention spans, which creates an interesting dichotomy for us. And so much of the work that we need to do with them is about centering them and getting them comfortable in silence, in connection, in deep focus with one another. So a basic acting class, let's say acting 1. In my classes, the beginning of that is just getting them to listen and to take one another in, to see one another, to hear one another, right? So there's a little bit of this, like we're training them to do the things that we know how to do naturally, but somehow in the socialization of life, like we forget, right? What it means to be embarrassed or to be like shy or to be really excited about something. So those early classes are about getting them back in touch with their basic, understanding as human beings. Once we move through those things, we talk about things like stakes. We talk about things like vulnerability, where some of the scarier parts, the scarier conversations in actor training is how can I be fully myself as another person? And for a lot of these students, they come into class and they don't know what it is to be themselves. So we're asking them we're holding space for them to explore those possibilities. And they get the help of having the words of some of the best, dramatic literature. We use plays and screenplays and poetry. We're giving them opportunities to try out different facets of humanity. And then we give them the harder skills, text, voice, movement, so that they can use their instruments most effectively to tell the stories that they're interested in telling.
Do students ever feel discomfort? And how do you think about discomfort?
Yes, discomfort is in my classes. If you take acting class with me, it's a big conversation. Discomfort, risk, safety, and also failure for me all kind of exist in the same category. They live in the same sort of microcosm. I like to lead by saying to them that a lot of this work will be uncomfortable because it's new. Most things that you do that you've never done before are uncomfortable, right? But just because you're not comfortable doesn't mean that you're unsafe. And that we establish this community in the classroom where they get permission to fail fearlessly.
Love that.
And I say to them, I know that nowhere else is anyone asking you to run headlong into failure. But in this classroom, I want you to imagine that you can do anything so long as we have agreed as a cohort, as a community, that we're going to support each other to explore this and not get it right the first or the 50th time. And it takes a while for them to buy into that. And I understand, why. I'm sure it must be very hard to be an 18 to 21 year old in 2025. But that is a central tenet of the work that we're doing, that they have to get the rigor, they have to develop the rigor that is necessary to take on something as scary as a career like this, let alone to step out their doors, in 2025 and not know what they might encounter.
I often said, my parents were like, yes, you can study acting and then you'll go to law school, and I just kept with it. And my parents actually will now often say, and they're political scientists like Stephanie, they really were sort of confused why they had a child who wanted to be an artist. But they will say to anyone who will listen to them that they thought that my training as an acting student was the best training of their 3 children, who all trained in different things at the university, was the most effective in terms of preparing me to be a person in the world. Like that the skills that you're describing of like how to human well, how to think from someone else's perspective, how to hold failure and complexity and risk taking were the things that allowed me to take big risks in my life and to try a lot of different things on, perhaps too many things at times, but to really kind of be out there in the world. What would you say to a parent who's thinking, gosh, my kid wants to study theater. I'm pretty anxious about that. Like, I imagine you get those parents at times. So like what's the response that you might have for that?
I had those parents, so I most certainly understand it.
So you're working from the
Yeah,
self, from your
yeah, yeah.
experience.
It's all personalized, all personalized. Yeah, no, I think my chief aim as an artist who is attempting to just guide and hold space for younger artists is that they leave my classroom space as a fuller human being, as a fuller version of themselves with the agency that they need to make whatever choice they want to make. And I say to many of them on the first day, I can't guarantee you that you'll leave these classes and become a professional actor, right? You may find that as you're taking these classes that, oh, I don't actually like being up on stage, but I like directing, or I like writing, or you know what? I just like going to support this work by being a patron of the arts. But my empathy has increased. My ability to imagine a life outside of the one that I have lived is now a part of my vocabulary. I feel like I'm a bigger person, and I feel like I understand my friends, my partners, my parents, my community better than I did when I walked into this classroom. And I've had people say this to me many times over the years. So I think to that parent who is like, I just don't quite know. I don't quite know. And I've had them come into my office, actually. I'd say that, this work is an investment into the future version of the child that you have. And I think that most parents, I assume, I don't have any children of my own, but I assume that most parents are doing the best that they can to create the little humans that will make the best and biggest impacts in the communities that they will end up in. And I think that the work that we're doing in these classrooms for artist training in particular is just continuing the work that they already did, is giving the students context to understand where they came from so they can make the decisions about where they want to go.
I love that. I want to go be in your classes, Corey.
We've got 22 young actors.
How about one really old actor who just joins in the back? Very quiet, but friendly.
I don't see age. I see no age. You can come and sit in whenever you want, Katie.
I'm thinking about our UT motto, what starts here changes the world. But changing the world is a heavy burden. I'm envious of your students, and I can imagine all the applicability across campus to other disciplines as well, some of those practices. And so I wonder, Corey, if you could think a bit about these concepts of community engagement and impact. What happens for you after you leave the classroom? And what maybe do you think your work helps our students do as they make an impact?
I think it is the part of this great opportunity that I have been given at the University of Texas to be walking with these young students. I think the impact on me is that it has repaired a lot of what I will call, in big quotation marks, because I don't want this to be a sob story, a lot of the damage that I experienced sort of matriculating through the education system and moving through the entertainment system, the entertainment industry. We made a lot of changes, but there's a lot of change left to come. So I think in the classroom, I get to see students walk into those rooms, some of them with the inability of like looking another person in the eye and saying their name. And at the end of 4 years, we film their showcase and, they're walking in and meeting with agents and casting directors. And not only are they looking them in the eyes, they can snap their fingers as well and say, I am here, I am so-and-so, and I'm here. So I think to be reminded on a daily basis in those classrooms that every bit of attention that we give them is paying into them, and that it is then paid back to me. And I'm reminded of this old saying, that you're entitled to your labor, but not the fruits of your labor. And the assumption that I make when I go in and I devote that time with each of those students, and I see them, that when they step out into the world, something has been changed on a molecular level, and perhaps they will interact with someone else or a community of other people in a stronger, more positive way because of the time that I spent with them. That's my hope.
But I think about like AI, I think about all the things happening in the world. The thing that is distinctly human is our imagination. Like that is at the core of innovation. So
no, I thank you for reminding me. And I did miss it. It is one of the most important fundamental building blocks in that first acting class. You can discover pretty quickly which students don't have a very well-developed relationship with their imagination. And I can't blame them now when you can open up your laptop and type up anything that you can imagine, that you can think of, and it can render it. It takes the onus off of you as the imaginer to do the imagining. So even trying to imagine a circumstance, imagine being in a room that's freezing when it's burning up outside, right? Can you do it, right? Can you imagine a space where, a fairy is a real person?
Zombies are real.
I've seen them. Yeah, just getting those skills that I think for those of us who grew up before the internet and before the computer, those skills came, I think, a little bit more easily. Because you would read and all you could do was imagine it in your head. You didn't have the TV show version or the video game version. So getting back to those basics, I think is also a really, really important part of the training that we're doing. We're offering those, I don't know if I would call it a soft skill, but those like really basic, like necessary human skills that you might not think about anymore because the computer is ready and willing to do it for you.
So I love this idea of human skills, imagination as a skill. How does this help our students prepare to engage in a complex world?
Yes. Well, I think that if you see something that's missing and you know that something is missing and you can imagine that it needs to be replaced with something that's not there, right? If you've not given yourself permission to imagine, like, I don't quite know what the right answer is, but like maybe we could use something that looked a little more like this or functioned a little more like this. And then let me go and try to experiment. I'm putting in big quotation marks here, experiment and try to find the best way to arrive at that thing without fear of failure, without fear that, people are going to think it's stupid, that might be something that could be a benefit to them and to the community that they find themselves in.
Love it.
Corey, thank you so much for being with us on the other side of campus. This was a true delight, and we really thank you for the time.
I thank you so very much, and I can't wait to hear who's next on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Corey.
You've been listening to the other side of campus.
Nicely done, Corey. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we check the boxes?
I think we did. Yep.
I think we did.
Yeah. Anything else you're thinking of, Stephanie?
For inviting me. Stephanie, I don't know. I mean, our schedules will probably be crazy, but I am so curious about your work. And would love to sit down and have a cup of tea or something.
I would love that. Yeah, I'll send you an email, Corey, and I'm sure we can find each other across campus.
On the other side of campus.
Perfect.